From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is Ag Day.
The tariff talk turns to China and what the future could bring for beef producers here at home.
I think, while not certain by any means, we're hopeful.
As the top cattle industry leaders gather in San Antonio, Texas for this year's CattleCon and digest some shocking new cattle numbers.
When we look at a 500,000 head decline in available cattle outside of feed yards.
While farmers at this year's Northern Corn and Soybean Expo are getting ready for planting season by keeping a close eye on the weather.
That's like a really big warning bell going into the spring.
Ag Day is on the road with coverage from two big events right now on Ag Day.
Ag Day is brought to you by Pioneer. Pioneer brand corn has game-winning statistics like a 10 bushel per acre yield advantage. Pioneer brand corn, your best year starts here.
Good morning, I'm Michelle Ruck coming to you from this year's CattleCon, the annual Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA trade show. And Ag Day's Clinton Griffiths is also on the road. He's at this year's Northern Corn and Soybean Expo in Fargo, North Dakota. Two big events at a pivotal time in American agriculture. And we start our Ag Day coverage on the road this morning from CattleCon here in San Antonio, Texas, where the size of this year's cattle herd is the talk. The latest USDA cattle inventory report confirmed the smallest cattle inventory since the early 1950s at 86.7 million head. And there's also no indication there's signs of rebuilding. The beef cow herd stands at 27.2 million head, and beef replacement heifers were also down 1% in the report, meaning female retention is not happening yet. So ag economists here at CattleCon 2025 tell me we're not even into the tightest cattle numbers yet for 2025.
When we look at a 500,000 head decline in available cattle outside of feed yards from a year ago, that's significantly not going to have big shock waves the first half of 25, but it's going to make a big difference in our available fed cattle supply for the second half of the year and specifically the fourth quarter.
And he thinks that number gets tighter into 2026 and 2027. And there are several factors behind the slow rebuild of the cow herd. They include the aging median age of cattle producers and the financial healing many operations are having to go through, plus weather.
The pasture and range conditions in so many portions of the country have just not been restored to a level that gives them encouragement for expansion, particularly with all the La Nina talk and the risk of drought associated with that. And then finally, the escalation that we have seen in interest rates and the impact it has on the total break-even cost on those females has been mentioned as well.
So although prices are currently at record levels, Close says that the market should be well supported through 2025 and beyond, as consumer demand for beef is not backing off even at these high prices.
Coverage of the 2025 NCBA Cattle Convention on Ag Day is brought to you by Alltech. Alltech delivers smarter, more sustainable solutions for agriculture. Our diverse portfolio of products and services improves the health and performance of plants and animals, resulting in better nutrition for all.
While I'm in San Antonio talking with cattle producers, Clinton Griffiths is on the road in Fargo, North Dakota, talking with farmers. Clinton, how's the weather in Fargo?
That's right, Michelle. Temperatures are frigid here in the single digits on Tuesday, but that's not cooling off the enthusiasm for farmers here at the Northern Corn and Soybean Expo. Now, a few hundred of North Dakota's best joining us here at the Butler Machinery Arena. Temperatures may be a little cold, but this crowd on hand for a full day of education and conversation ahead of the 2025 planting season. Now, USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey also on hand to share his forecast for the growing year, answering questions about moisture in the months ahead given a lack of snowfall in the northern plains this winter.
If you look at the season-to-date snowfall totals, you've had more snow in New Orleans and Pensacola than in Des Moines, Iowa, and Lincoln, Nebraska. And it's absolutely crazy to think about that. 1 inch in Lincoln, 1 inch in Omaha so far this winter, less than 5 in Des Moines. So you combine the fact that we had this really dry late summer, autumn, almost no snow in the winter, that's like a really big warning bell going into the spring, because if you don't replenish that soil moisture, then you've got issues come summer. So we are very concerned.
Now, Rippey, of course, weighing in on the groundhog forecast this week. He says the atmosphere seems to indicate to him 6 more weeks of winter. Now, we'll have more from here in Fargo coming up later this week, including a great group of experts that are on hand. We'll send it back to you in warm Texas.
Coverage of the Northern Corn and Soybean Expo on Ag Day is brought to you by the North Dakota Corn Utilization Council and the North Dakota Soybean Council. As the world grows, we're helping plant opportunity by putting your checkoff dollars to work.
Thanks, Clinton. We've been keeping you updated on this, President Trump's plan to tack on tariffs for some of our top trading partners. However, just hours before 25% tariffs were due to kick in on products coming in from Mexico and Canada, President Trump put them on hold for both countries for 30 days. It comes after Mr. Trump says Mexico agreed to deploy 10,000 Mexican soldiers to the U.S.-Mexican border to combat fentanyl trafficking and illegal immigration. The U.S. in return will strengthen efforts to stop the flow of weapons into Mexico. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau confirmed his country's commitment to bolstering border security with $1.3 billion in funding, adding 10,000 border personnel, and the creation of a fentanyl czar to combat drug-related crime.
The difference between Mexico and Canada thus far is that Canada thinks we're fighting a trade war with them. That's not the case here. This is a drug war. And I think it's important that if Canadian citizens themselves can understand that what we are trying to do here is stop the killing of Americans by these deadly drugs, to stop Canada from allowing terrorists on the watch list, up to 100 have already come in, from entering our country. That will be the way to find a resolution of this problem.
Meanwhile, a 10% tariff did go into effect on China, and Beijing hit back with its own broad package of economic measures, adding tariffs of 10 or 15% on a number of American imports. It plans to implement a 15% tariff on coal and liquefied natural gas products, as well as a 10% tariff on crude oil, ag machinery, and large engine cars imported from the U.S. The tariffs are scheduled to take effect next Monday. I spoke here with Dan Hallstrom, the president and CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation. He says he's optimistic about revisiting the Phase 1 trade deal.
So I think, especially the beef industry, it was a home run agreement, the Phase 1. So hopes for a Phase 2, I think, while not certain by any means, we're hopeful.
And possibly next in President Trump's crosshairs for tariffs, the EU. As we told you earlier this week, Mr. Trump has renewed his criticism of the European Union. He accuses it of exploiting the U.S. on trade, particularly when it comes to autos and agriculture. EU leaders are now calling for a united and a collective response.
We will be ready for tough negotiations where needed and to find solutions where possible, to work out any grievances, and to set the foundations for a stronger partnership. We will be open and pragmatic in how to achieve that. But we will make it equally clear that we will always protect our own interests, however and whenever that is needed. This will always be the European way.
The president of the European Commission says she wants to start negotiations with the U.S. early instead of waiting for President Trump to make good on his tariff threat. Brooke Rollins' nomination to be the next Secretary of Agriculture has passed a key hurdle. The Senate Ag Committee voting unanimously to advance Rollins' nomination. The bipartisan approval in committee is a critical step towards her final confirmation by the full Senate, which is expected to happen soon. And the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be the nation's top health official also will go to the next level. The Senate Finance Committee voting to advance his nomination for a floor vote, but the committee vote was not unanimous at 14-13. 14 Republicans voted together to advance Kennedy's nomination, with even Senator Bill Cassidy, a Louisiana physician who has aired deep concerns about approving Kennedy, joining in. All 13 Democrats opposed him. A full Senate vote has not yet been scheduled. A winter storm is expected to continue to bring snow and ice to areas of the Midwest on into New England today. Meteorologist Alyssa Heilman has an update.
That next system starting in the plains, and as we go through the day on Wednesday, seeing it strengthen, of course, bringing some mixed precipitation to areas of the Great Lakes and into the Midwest as well, seeing some rain and some snow along with that system as well. Going through Thursday, moving further east throughout the United States and then off into the ocean. Then going into Friday, we've got some precipitation, some snow out in the northwest, definitely in those mountainous regions as well. And going later into Friday, seeing that precipitation again move further east as it moves out into areas of the northern United States, and some rainy precipitation on Saturday as well, again starting in the plains and expected to move out through the Midwest and then further east and onto the East Coast before making its way into the ocean in Saturday as well. And check out this little one, Peanut Coleman in Scottsville, Virginia, sharing this video of calving season. He says this one is still getting the walking thing figured out. Mama is right there to help though. I'll have more in your forecast coming up.
Soybeans and corn continue to push even higher on Tuesday, but what about cattle? We saw some big drops to start the week. I'll have some analysis here from CattleCon. And later, two little pups versus a cattle guard. See who won in the country.
Ag Day is brought to you by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator steel closing wheels provides a 13 bushel advantage per acre in no-till and a 7 bushel advantage per acre in conventional. Do you have enough room in your bin to switch to the Germinator?
Joining us with markets from CattleCon 2025 is Brad Koima, Barlick, and we did have a higher day in the grains on Tuesday. Lower again in the cattle though, Brad. Is this profit taking or the fact that we've opened the Mexican border to feeder cattle?
I think it's maybe a couple of things. I think the Mexican border certainly has something to do with it, although the last I've heard about that is that opening is going to be a really soft, slow deal, you know, so I don't know. I think that's part of the psychology, though. Certainly we rallied feeder cattle futures when it closed, so we have to make up for that a little bit. But I think somewhat of a disappointment in the cash, okay, in the fact that the North hardly traded and what was traded was a little lower. And these opening bids this week are no runaway. The Packer seems to be dug in. He's going to try to get some leverage back, right? Now, the one thing I would say about that, I did notice that the 15 to 30 day last week was really small, only 7,000 compared to like maybe 18,000 the year before. So hopefully we're pulling them a little closer to the knife, but it doesn't feel like we've got a lot of leverage this week. I continue to worry about something called absenteeism, and I think that's in the market a little bit. Futures doesn't like uncertainty.
No doubt, and we were probably overbought, but can we stay above some of these current levels if the funds don't participate? What could spook them to get out?
Well, hopefully the funds defend, which is what they've done. Funds got a decent long position, a record long position in feeder cattle. And people can talk all they want to about trying to fade the funds, but I'll tell you what, the old guy here would rather be on their side, right? There is a time when they get out, of course, but I would think that what helps here is there's a significant discount to cash still, so we've got some of that pad built in already to the break if we get it, but I feel a little like we've got to chop wood here a little bit for a week or two, where it wouldn't be the first time the week of Super Bowl you see softer beef and all the rest, and we'd have a little bit of a setback. I'm not real bearish, but there's one thing that bothers me a little bit, and that's the being able to ensure that we've got a reliable workforce.
I'm going to give you credit. You predicted record highs in first quarter. We've hit them. Will we continue to see upside?
I still think if the thing falls right, we have a chance to test 220 sometime in the first quarter. I was a little surprised in the inventory report because I thought we'd not have to feed every heifer again, and we're not feeding all of them, but we're feeding more than we thought we were going to, right? We thought we were going to 1.5% more on the replacements. Now we got 1% less. But I still think the first quarter is tight. It looks to me like demand is still alive and well. Let's keep our leverage, stay current. We got a shot at it, I think.
Thanks so much, Brad Koima with Koima Barlick. That is Markets Now.
Watch Markets Now with Michelle Rourke on the Farm Journal YouTube channel, keeping you updated throughout the day on the markets at the open, midday, and close. Find out what moved the markets today and what to expect the market to do next.
To contact Brad, give him a call at 712-722-0023 or visit the website at kkvtrading.com.
Temperatures expected across the United States for this afternoon. Seeing the warmth there in the south, a good amount of areas seeing those temperatures in the 80s, 80 in Jacksonville, 82 in Miami, a lot of 80s also in Texas, Brownsville, San Antonio, El Paso, Amarillo, all seeing temperatures there in the 80s, and another 80 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona. Temperatures in some northern portions of the United States much colder than that, just 9 degrees in Billings, 19 in Bismarck, 28 in Minneapolis. Turning to the overnight hours into tomorrow morning, temperatures of course cooling down, seeing some 60s in portions of the south, 64 in New Orleans, as well as San Antonio, 68 in Brownsville. Then as we go off to the northwest, seeing temperatures in Portland, 28 degrees, 25 in Seattle, 41 in Salt Lake City, and the temperatures expected for tomorrow afternoon. Again, that warmth in the south, 80s in Florida, in Texas, 81 there in New Orleans, and seeing some 40s in portions of the central United States, 40 in Rapid City, 41 in Omaha, 47 in St. Louis. A look at our precipitation outlook for February 11th to the 17th. Large portion of the United States expected to be wetter than normal. Now turning to our temperature outlook for that same time period, below average temperatures again. For a large portion of the United States, only one that's expecting to see those above normal temperatures are going to be portions of the southeast, especially Florida there, expecting to see those temperatures above normal. Now turning to Tucker, Georgia, we've got a high of 68, a low of 54. St. Charles, Missouri, high of 40, low of 39. Finally, Concord, North Carolina, high of 54, low of 40.
Canada's pork industry has been closely watching the tariff situation with the U.S. unfold. The CBC in Canada speaking with pork producers in Manitoba. One producer saying if tariffs of 25% were placed on the country by the U.S., it would be a gut punch to the industry, impacting both pork products processed in Canada and live piglets that are exported to the U.S. He told the CBC, quote, "Ultimately, we need the U.S. for our products, and that's the bottom line," end quote. Going on to say that Manitoba exports more than $450 million worth of pork. It produces 8 million pigs annually at over 600 farms. U.S. pork and beef had a large presence at one of the most important annual trade shows for Japan's restaurants. It's the Yakuniku Business Fair. Besides the U.S. Meat Export Federation, there are also equipment manufacturers, culinary organizations, and sauce and spice companies, some of which partner with U.S. MEF when promoting U.S. red meat in Japan.
We do work with some of the exhibitors like a seasoning company, or for example today we had some Japan Barbecue Association nearby. We work together with them, for example, like supporting the beef grilling cook-off contest.
The show is also a preferred venue for many competitors of U.S. red meat in Japan, including domestic trade associations, as well as suppliers from Australia and Mexico. Still ahead, some inspiring puppies. See how they overcame their fears to take on a dreaded cattle guard next. Cattle producers here know those cattle guards can be a lifesaver on the ranch, but for some humans and our best friends, they can be a little tricky. This video comes from Jason Gluck. He's the owner and operator of Gluck Pony Express, and his travels take him all around the nation, including cattle country, and he brings his 4 dogs with him. But the cattle guards proved challenging for his littlest dogs, Tater and Beth. As you just saw, Tater made it across crawling on her belly, while he says Beth found a way to go around. He says his Great Pyrenees Freya tried to show them how to get across, and once they did, you saw Mom grab the puppy by the leg, all excited they had done it. He says the exercise was a great way to build confidence in his 2 puppies.
Good girl. Good girl.
And that's all the time we have for this morning. Thanks for watching. Join us tomorrow for more from this year's CattleCon here in San Antonio, as well as the Northern Corn and Soybean Expo in West Fargo. Have yourself a great day.